If you are trying to make any kind of meaningful, effective change in your life, you've come to the right place. Hey, good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of We're Talking Shift. So, my special guest today is all about turning your life and mind into medicine, which is pretty much what we are all about here on We're Talking Shift. If you have been listening for a while now, then you know that holistic health coach, as a holistic health coach, everything that I talk about and invite my guests to talk about is always involving up-leveling some aspect of your health. And that could be physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. So I know that you are going to love what Dr. Cassie Huckaby is going to share with us today. Now, before we bring her on, let me just give you the deets on her so you know what she is all about. Dr. Huckaby is a naturopathic physician and founder of Grit Natural Medicine. Through her own journey of healing the impossible, she discovered unshakable truths that she now utilizes through her medicine to help others realize their true potential and optimal health, and ultimately shows them how to obtain freedom from the medical system. Yes. Dr. Huckaby's passion is to provide medicine that heals and education that demystifies healing. Her medicine weaves together the modern world of quantum medicine with the unchangeable truths held in ancient wisdom. She helps her patients understand the language of their body through a deep listening and understanding of how things, including the mind, neurology, and soul, impact the body. She focuses on all that encompasses the human being and believes that with true understanding, truth, and grit, you can do what most say is impossible. And above all, Dr. Cassie Huckaby believes, lives, and teaches that your life is your medicine. So, with that being said, welcome, welcome, Dr. Cassie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm delighted that you're here, and I so appreciate your time because I know that you are probably bombarded with a lot of people dying to work with you these days. I'm certain of it. So,
Yes, living, right? Um,
yeah, yeah.
we're tired of the old way. We're tired of the deception and the lies and the limitation. And there's been a huge shift. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that has come out of this chaos that we call this time right now is
Mhm.
just this unquenchable desire for truth and for it to be a lived truth, not just something we read about and think about, but something that we experience. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely a different season, and I'm just honored to get to be here and work with people.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the one hand, you see really every element of the spectrum of how people are reacting and responding and
Mhm.
behaving throughout this massive global shift that we're in on
Yeah.
like every aspect, from politics and ideology, and all the way down to our health.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting to see so many different behaviors and responses to this. And I feel bad on the one hand for people that are still in a very fearful state
Yeah.
because they don't understand how much power they have within them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but then I'm excited for those that do have an inkling of that, do have a grasp on that, or at least have the willingness to start learning about it.
Hmm.
I'm excited that there are going to be way showers for those that are trying to find their way through what is a very scary and uncertain time for a lot of people.
Yeah. I think exactly that. I think one of the things that I have seen about this time that's so powerful is due to the blatant uncertainty. So, not that uncertainty isn't always here, but we
Hmm.
are we are being forced into admitting that we are uncertain, that we don't know certain things, and within that, we don't have confidence within our capacity and our ability to take the next step forward for us, because we have been trained to rely on a system, to
Hmm.
rely on a medical industry, to rely on all of these different things external to us, and then when things are shaken up, what settles or what you're left with is everything that's actually true. And for a lot of us, we are not living in homes that we built. So we don't even understand our foundation, what's happening in like the
Yeah.
walls, the roof. So then you do not feel safe no matter what, because you did not build your home. So then when the
Mhm.
ground starts shaking, your confidence can't be in there because you just moved into something that was built by somebody else.
Right, right.
So this is where we're
Yeah.
at now, is it's demanding us to look at every part of our lives, which is massively uncomfortable, because with the programming and with the way that we think and needing something external to ourselves, we've also lost the self-respect and self-reliance of being brutally honest with ourselves and understanding that we are our biggest obstacle most of the time, which if that can be true, then the alternative is also true, that we are our greatest power and
Yeah.
that we have been the whole time, but we're in this uncomfortable time of standing on our own 2 feet and not
Mhm.
looking to how everybody else is reacting to determine how we are feeling. And so
Right.
this time is drawing out so much truth that it's not new.
Right.
It's just here and in our
It's
face.
yeah, being
Yeah,
revealed.
exactly.
It's just newly being revealed at a
Yes.
different level now.
Yes. And
Yeah.
now the intensity of that input is demanding us to have a response, an output,
Mhm.
um, that's in direct proportion to the intensity of this time. And most of us don't have the things in place
Right.
to be able to respond to it or to buffer it or to be well despite all things.
Right. Right.
Because if we are well, and it doesn't matter the circumstances. And so this is just a time of massive opportunity. I even in my own healing journey, had I not been pushed back into a corner, I
Mhm.
wouldn't have had the availability, the openness, right? Which is kind of what you hinted at towards the beginning of this too, was just this openness to say, maybe there's something different. Maybe this thing could feel better. Maybe I don't have to be terrified and locked in my house every single day. Maybe I am the most powerful thing, and it doesn't matter what they call anything. It doesn't matter what's going to come out next week, next month, or in a
Yeah.
year, because if it is true, it stands, and it's true. It's
Right.
not true except for in 2023. It's not true except for in March 2020. It's not. And so a
Yeah.
lot of people had so many conditions
Mhm.
layered onto what they think is being powerful. Well, even people that are more naturally minded, they were shaken up too, because it's like, do you really believe in what you say you believe?
Right.
Or is
Yeah.
this just a conversation piece? Is this just a trend? Is this just fun? Is this, a
Right. Yeah.
status symbol? Like,
Yeah.
what parts of you are real and what parts are counterfeit? And when they're counterfeit, they don't hold you. And this
Right.
is such a beautiful time of demanding every individual not to look external anymore, but to
Mhm.
shut everything down and say, what do I believe? And how do I know that I believe it? And if I believe it, if I'm not acting in that in
Mhm.
accordance
Mhm.
with that, then what's coming up for me? Because
Yeah.
none of this is
Yeah.
an external thing. All of this is an internal game.
Right, which is completely opposite of what, you know, the your average bear is thinking. If
Exactly.
you have been conditioned
Yes.
to worship false idols, shall we say,
Hmm. Hmm.
and lean on the false idols of medicine, the false idols of doctors, the false idols of other leaders,
Yeah.
whatever it is, particular crystals, I don't care
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
All of those things are wonderful in their place until you feel like you can't function without them and that
Hmm.
you don't have what you need. If all of that goes away,
Yeah.
that somehow you are lacking and you
Yeah.
don't have the capabilities
Exactly.
to right yourself or to
Yeah.
rise up to whatever challenge you need to
Hmm.
rise up to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's such a powerful point. Because what I see a lot with people when we're trying to heal is they've done everything. Most of the people that I get have done all of the treatments. They've gone to week-long events. They've done everything, top dollar, everything. And they come to me exactly saying that, like, nothing is holding. And
Mhm.
that's where I always tell them, you have to change to change. And everyone's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, no, 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 no. You have to change to change. That
Mhm.
means everything that informs your physical body has to change. And what informs your physical body is not just the food, the hydration, the
Yeah.
supplements, the herbs, the
Yeah.
crystals, the
Yeah.
lasers. That
It's
is not what it is. And so to
right.
flip this on its head, of even to say what I'm trying to get people to understand within this world too, is that the medicine is not the supplements. If that were true, we'd have a nation full of healthy people. The
Right?
medicine is not the pharmaceuticals. The medicine is not the surgeries. The medicine is not anything that happens in the hospital, but we've been trained to think that. If we can pull back and say, those are tools, if anything, some of those are actually poisons, but we'll just generalize and say that they're tools.
Right.
Okay, so then what is medicine? It is what you think, breathe, do, feel every single second of every single day. You are dosing yourself all
Mhm.
day long. That's medicine.
Yeah.
And so
Your
then if
mind is
you
medicine.
exactly, your
Your
mind is
mind.
medicine, your life is medicine, your being is at medicine, just your whole experience is medicine. And if you don't have the outcome that is what you want, if your health is not a reflection of what you want it to be, it's not the tools that have to change. It's the medicine. And the medicine is, how are you thinking? What are
Mhm.
you doing? Because that's the other thing too that we've got going on right now is we've got a bunch of people saying they want to be well and they want the system to crumble and they want all of these things. And then they can tell me how many celebrities are pushing a jab or whatever we want to call it, but they can't tell me how many people have spontaneously healed from this or that.
Right.
So what are you actually paying attention to? What was your medicine right there? Because you're not reaching for the medicine. You are using all of your capacity as a human being to consume something
Yes.
that is poisonous. And so then we have to really like go back and reclaim everything that we think we knew, flip it on its head. And like even within medicine, like you have been lied to with regards to what medicine is. And like if you
Yes.
just simplify everything and be like, if it is medicine, then why we've got more medicine than you could ever imagine.
Right.
Every
Right.
kind you could like possibly need, doing like so many
Mhm.
different things. Why are we not well? But we don't question those things. We're like, nope, that's there. It exists. It always has. My parents believed it. My grandparents did. Da 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 da. It's such
Yeah.
a great thing. Why?
Mhm. Right. Well, I think, yeah, and this is one of the things that I love about your messaging around health and healing is that it it always boils down to uh, it always boils down to understanding like the inherent powers that we're
Mhm.
endowed with regards to our bodies and our minds, learning how to use those powers,
Yeah,
and then truly how to inhabit your life.
yeah.
I mean, everything kind of boils down to those elemental things.
Mhm.
And it's just it's it's crazy how you see so many people, and I see this with my clients all the time too. They're so unbelievably disconnected
Mhm.
from their bodies
Yeah.
and from the power of their mind. They have this amazing, capacity, this
Mhm.
amazing energy
Yeah.
that is either underutilized or misused, misdirected,
Yeah.
and it's like you have this magic
Yeah.
within you. You could call it magic, you could call it, the spiritual substance, you could call it energy, you could call it vibration, you can call it
Mhm.
whatever words you want, but it always boils down to that very, special, that spark
Yes.
that is what, gives us all life, and that
Mhm.
amazing power that we have to shift, to recreate, to heal, to adjust, whatever it is. It's right there. And so the satisfaction of being able to help somebody turn into that and then watch them realize,
Mhm.
right, what they can do by
Yeah.
themselves,
Yeah.
with themselves, is there's nothing more fulfilling than that.
Mhm.
But I imagine, like, when you have clients that come in, as you alluded to earlier, that say, I've tried, a dozen things.
Mhm.
There must be an element of I don't know, unlearning almost
Yeah,
that they have to do in
yeah,
order to get from point A to point B to even be open to considering that maybe they have more power in themselves than they ever knew.
absolutely. Yeah, and that's exactly what we do. If you have a visit with me, the first thing that we do is we don't go and manage all the doing, all the supplements, all the diets, we spend majority of our time combing through your neurological programming because it's a very real hardwired thing. So we've got to acknowledge that the body does work in a certain way and we honor
Mhm.
that. And now we
Mhm.
work with it. And then there's another component that is these, hardwired subconscious belief systems that will sabotage everything no matter how much you want something, no matter how much you're doing to achieve that something.
Yeah.
It just is because of the way this world works, it is literally impossible to get the outcome that you want. And this has been set up exactly by design. We have been studied more than almost any freaking creature on the planet. And this is all by design because they know that if you are not aware of what actually creates health and what
Mhm.
actually creates dis-ease in the human body, and you're always chasing the actual physical body and the physical manipulation of biochemistry, physiology, you will be doing that for the rest of your time on this physical plane with,
Yeah.
mostly better because there are some physical components to this existence, but
Sure.
that is not what's at play. And so when
Mhm.
this is happening and this is just as real as gravity, so people will be like, oh, what, I don't believe in it or whatever. It doesn't matter. So like if you and I right here speaking are like, okay, well, we're in a group that we don't believe in gravity. You can't see it. It doesn't always work because a monk levitated, 100 years ago. So
Right.
it's not,
Right.
we don't believe in it. Well, if
Yeah.
we drop a pin right now, it falls to the ground.
Mhm.
So then we can like intellectualize and like convince ourselves that it's still, well, something, it was just a rare, whatever. It works because
Mhm.
there are certain laws on this physical plane,
Yeah.
even though we can't see them, they are happening. And
Yeah.
what most people are doing is all of this capacity within the human psyche, within the human body, within just existence is being used against them every single second of every single day. And then they
Right.
take a supplement to undo something that's on the level of the metaphysical background. And just, it doesn't, you're on the wrong playing field. So I always tell my patients, like, you come in and you have to wash out. Because if you come in trying to push your beliefs on me, that this is not going to work. It's got to be a
Mhm.
complete washout where you put up everything on the table and say, I tried it all. And this is the level that I am today, trying it all. So what I'm going to do is now just give everything up for grabs. I don't know anything because that's what I had to do in my own health journey. It was like, okay,
Mm.
I knew just a fuck ton. I knew more than almost anyone. I could talk research better than anyone. And my health was not a reflection of somebody that should be healing anybody or helping other
Right.
people heal. And then
Yeah.
it was like
Yeah.
this big news flash to me of like, okay, well, I know all of the stuff. And that doesn't help anything. If anything, it made it
Right.
more difficult for me to overcome what I had to overcome because I quote unquote knew so much about it. But then when I
Mhm.
just went to rock bottom and said, you know what? Every time I try to get one of those things to be proven to me, it can't be proven. So then I just kind of got pissed off and said, okay, all of this is up for grabs.
Yeah.
Allopathic medicine, natural medicine, holistic, integrative, all of you, all of it up for grabs because until you prove yourself to me through my lived experience, I'm not going to buy into your belief system again. We're a bunch of people that are just dizzy with belief systems. And so if you're coming to me to get another belief system, we got a big problem. What I need for
Yeah.
you to do is just to wash out, see what is true, what is real,
Right.
align with natural principles, natural laws that happen, even if you don't want to admit them. Just like I talk about placebo all the time. We talk about
Mhm.
this brilliant, beautiful thing that we have we should call it something different, but we only look at it as some annoying thing in research design that goes up against a
Right.
pharmaceutical drug or an intervention or a therapy or something. And I'm
Yeah.
like, this is happening every single day,
Oh,
every
yeah,
single second.
yeah, yeah, placebo and nocebo all
Yeah,
day, every day,
all day, every day. And you
and
might as well use it
yeah,
to your advantage.
right, you might as well understand it and then
Mhm.
admit how it's affected you, look
Yeah,
around at how it's
yeah,
affecting other people, and then figure out that that is a amazing tool that you could be using
yeah,
to, enhance your own health
yeah.
and life and well-being.
Mhm.
I wanna come back for a minute to, because you talked about becoming a doctor. You started out right in allopathic medicine,
Mhm.
and then you obviously at some point
Yeah.
decided to go a new route. So what were you going through, or what issues were you trying to figure out
Mhm.
just personally that has
Yeah.
helped you make this shift and put you on this new path?
Yeah. So I thought I was a really healthy, child, healthy young adult. And then in college, health started declining a little bit, but nothing severe enough to make any drastic changes. I grew up in West Texas, and we're very traditional in everything that we do. Um, but then I had a series of vaccines in college, and then it was kind of the tipping point for me. And so at that point, I started presenting with multiple autoimmune conditions. And then because I was studying to go to medical school, I, of course, go to the industry that I'm about to buy into with my life.
Mm.
And they basically said that they could suppress my symptoms, which could cause just a whole slew of additional symptoms that were more severe than even what I was experiencing. And so I just took a pause, and then I kept going back, and I just kept accumulating words. And then at one point I was like, so what can we do about it? Because I'm in my 20s. And
Yeah.
like they were like, well, it's just your genetics. And then I look at my family,
Oh.
who's a very strong family. We all grew up on the farm. They're so strong. And I'm like, I don't think that's true, but okay. But at that time I had no idea of
Right.
everything else that could impact my health.
Yeah, you're
And
still
then,
trusting in this
well, it was
institution
the
of
only thing I
medicine.
knew. Yeah.
Right.
And so then there was just this absolute heart crushing, defeated moment, being sent home saying, like, there's nothing you can do. Good luck. Like, the future of this is not good. And then you're just in this story that you didn't even know existed until 5 minutes ago. And your whole world changes, and it's not pretty there. It's not a good whole world change. And so in that moment, I just went home and tried to be really practical, really like simple in my thinking. And there was just this overwhelming thing of like, I'm about to give my whole entire, I've worked my ass off to
Mhm.
go and be and do and be a doctor and all of these things. And I need help right now. And I went to the people that are going to be me in a few years, and they sent me home, or they're going to give me something that could destroy other functions that are currently working in my body. And then just the simplicity of my thinking in that moment was like, what in the world am I about to? And so I was just defeated. And
Mhm.
in that, kind of like what we touched on earlier, I was wide open because I had no options. And like when you have no options, you have to be available if there's any hope in you. If there's
Right.
any like, maybe I can survive this. Maybe I could be different than what you say the prognosis of three of these are, much less all five.
Yeah.
But I was just at this like just stalemate in life of like, I don't want to go and do all of that because they couldn't help me at my
Mhm.
lowest point. And so then, but I had put so much value in that industry, in those letters, in that degree. And
Mhm.
I was looking at everything that I had done up until that point. I'm just going to throw it away because I find out last minute, right before
Mhm.
the big crunch, that
Mhm.
this thing is not what it seems to be, only because it could not help me. And I was
Yeah.
young. And so this
Yeah.
whole thing just like blew my mind wide open to where I was available enough for a moment in a coffee shop where I overheard someone talking about a voodoo doctor. And because I needed anything at that time, I was available for the information. Because otherwise, I would have been so hard headed and like, this is
Oh,
medicine, that is not, all of
yeah.
that stuff. That was the world I was in. Like, we did not
Yeah.
value natural medicine. We did not value herbs. We did not value even like diet.
Mhm.
Just ate
No,
what we want, moved
bizarrely.
enough, and
Yeah.
looked healthy. So that, and like how you looked mattered more than how you
Mhm.
felt. And so that was the reality I was in at that time. And then life just crashed in on me. And I found this integrative clinic, and I went and shadowed just out of pure curiosity. I wasn't wanting it. I just was like, what is a voodoo doctor? Like, I kind of want to
Right.
see it.
That's crazy. So wait a
Yeah.
sec, before you continue, is this are we moving into a going rogue story, or is that, or
We
is there gonna be a
are.
different? Okay. All right,
I
let's
feel
just
like
go
my
on.
whole life might be a going rogue story, but yes, this was the
Yeah.
start.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
continue. So, the
Yes.
voodoo doctor.
The voodoo doctor. So got my attention out of just necessity.
Right.
and desperation. And so I show up to shadow at that clinic, and it I always say it was like breathing for the first time. And it wasn't anything that anyone was trying to sell me. I thought I was in the twilight zone, because like I had come out of the hospital setting where we would spend maybe 5 minutes with patients. We would already have their prescriptions on the pad prior to walking in. Sometimes we referred to them as their number, not even as their name. You weren't supposed to have emotions if someone passed. Like, this was the world
Oh
I
my
was used to.
gosh. Yeah.
And then I come into this clinic and we spend 2 hours with the first patient. I'm like, what is happening? And we care about how they feel, and we ask questions about what they experience in their life and how they eat and move. And I just was like, it was so unfamiliar, but somehow it was the most familiar thing I'd ever experienced, even though I'd never experienced it.
Isn't that crazy how
Yeah.
something that's so natural was so,
Foreign.
far-fetched from you? Like, you're like,
Yeah.
"What is this?" And it's
Like,
like the most real natural thing
exactly.
in the world.
Yes. And
Crazy.
that's kind of, I feel like that's not an uncommon story for a lot of
Sure.
us, unfortunately. We're
Yep.
so separated from all that is real here and all that is true. And so
Yeah.
we're living these illusions that don't feel good, that don't nourish, that don't hydrate, that don't oxygenate. And we're wondering why we're suffocating, why we're dehydrated, literally, spiritually, soul, mind, body, like why our bodies are not doing well. And
Mhm.
that was me. I was the living example of that. Everything looked okay on the
Right.
outside,
Yeah. Yeah, as
and it
long as
was
it looks
very
good,
much, and that was
don't
all
don't
that
mess
mattered.
with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and it was just like, hide it too. Make sure
Mhm.
nobody knows you have all of these things going on. Just like hide it and try to, change the way you walk, because when you start losing sensation in your feet, your gait changes, and it's all just this massive act to hide what your experience is.
How
And
draining.
so, yeah, and I feel like this is what a lot of people experience too. Like, how much hiding are we doing? What if we took off everything and said, you know what? I'm hurt. I'm
Mhm.
scared. I'm confused, but that's not what we're doing. We're all stepping up and being like, oh, yeah, no, it's fine. This is good. Everything's good. We're all
Mhm.
happy. And then we're dying by ourselves behind doors.
Right. Yep.
And, and I'm sure you experience this too with the people you work with, but like, my view of humanity is so different, because
Mhm.
I get to see people, and I get to see them raw, and I get to see their emotions, and when they are brave enough to share with me those things about them that they feel shameful about, that they feel guilty about, that they feel are quote unquote bad.
Right.
And then it's like, no, 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 no. We are human. There is no good or bad. These containers that we put ourselves in are self-induced torture. And
Yeah.
I was the queen of it. I wanted to be good. I wanted to be smart. I wanted to perform. I just needed it all to look good, smell good, be good, at the
Mhm.
expense of my life. And then
Mhm.
when I got to a point where I was losing life, then it started waking me up to, I never lived my life. I never
Mhm.
knew who I was. I never knew what I liked just because I liked it. I never, like, everything was so worked through by the time I actually did something, that there
Mhm.
was no nourishment in return. Because when you're performing, you cannot experience it.
Yeah.
And that was the hardest thing for me to unwind in me, because it was so ingrained in everything that I did, that
Mhm.
I needed it to be perfect. I needed it to be pretty. I needed it to smell good. And so then the irony of what true healing actually demands of you is, true healing says, sorry, you're going to have to drop that perfection at the door to walk in here. And you're
Mhm.
going to have to understand what true unconditional love is through this experience. And it is ugly and it is stinky, but it shows up every single day. And
Yeah.
it is something more true than you've ever experienced. And you're going to get to a point where it no longer matters how it looks to anybody else, because
Right.
of how it feels to you. And that's where
Yeah.
we have to get people, because that's the medicine. That's our internal compass. That's how you know what is quote unquote right or wrong. It's just got to be right or wrong for you. And your
Right.
body is so true. It will tell you, is this right for you?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes, if it's not, it'll say no. And then
It
life gets
right.
really simple,
Yeah,
really, really
it will
simple.
tell you, it will talk to you,
Yeah.
it will give you messages, you
Yes.
know, in a variety of ways, you know,
Yes.
it's like it's usually subtle at first, and then if you
Mhm.
ignore it, it gets a little bit louder, it gets a little more uncomfortable, and, you
Yeah.
know, and if you continue to ignore, then, you know, then you're hit by a bus. Okay, I'll get your attention, maybe
Yeah.
it's this, you know,
Yeah.
I'll just take you out then, and so that you have nothing to do but think
Yeah.
and try
Mhm.
to listen. Yeah, it's our bodies are just these amazing, intelligent organisms that
Mhm.
if we just learn how to develop a relationship with it
Yeah.
and listen to the language,
Yeah.
it's amazing how it will not steer you wrong.
No.
It really won't.
Yeah.
Um, so so back to the voodoo
Yeah.
clinic. So what happened then after your eyes were open to this
Yeah.
whole other way of approaching
Yes.
patients or clients?
Yes.
So what happened then?
Well, so I couldn't stop going. I was absolutely obsessed, addicted, and trying to just like play it off like, oh yeah, I know of this world. So I'm just gonna get a couple more hours, which I didn't need any hours. I was just obsessed.
Hmm.
And so I kept going back. And like there was something within me that said, everything that you're about to say yes to, which was allopathic medical school and that whole world, it just felt disgusting. And I shadowed so much that summer, like every single day I could be there, they let me come. And the MD, he was an integrative doctor. He at one point was like, "You need to meet somebody," and I was like, "Okay." And it was a naturopathic doctor, and I got to sit in with him, and he would come and take the hardest cases. And so I would watch him do this stuff with like ALS, MS, all of these things that I thought you couldn't touch.
Mm.
And then I became like even more obsessed because this was the world I was living in. And then I was like, okay, so scratch everything that you ever thought you knew. There's a possibility. But I was still so hard headed and so indoctrinated that I was like, what if I just go do the other and then put a natural twist on it and da 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 da? Because I
Ah.
still wanted that world. I still wanted everything that I worked for. So I had actually gone to the MD at the end because I had to choose between naturopathic medical school and allopathic medical school. And it was like right there. And so I was like in a time crunch because I had to get to either San Diego in 2 weeks or just go ahead and start there in the town that I was in. And so I was like crunch time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to him. I never asked him any questions, never. And the one question I asked him was like, which way do I go? Like, what do I choose? Do I choose natural medicine or do I choose allopathic and then go natural like you did? And he just said, I can't answer that for you. And I was like, you've got to freak. I've literally not asked you any questions. The only question I asked you can't give me an answer. But now I
Come
know,
on, man.
right? The value that I got from that is something that I could never
Mm.
imagine because then, you know, I broke down in my car that day outside the clinic and I was just like mad because I wanted someone to make the decision so that if it was wrong, it wasn't my fault. And if I gave up this
Right.
whole world that my family valued, my friends valued, I had worked so hard for, that I would feel better about it because it wasn't me, right? Mirror that on what's going on right now in the world too, if you're listening to this. I wanted somebody else to make the decision for me so that if it wasn't quote unquote right, I wouldn't be at fault for screwing up my life. So I had to make the
Mm-hmm.
decision. I made the decision and I jumped all in and I said, if the other didn't work, so I've got to give something else a shot for my life. And so then I said, if this thing is going to work, it is going to prove itself to me and I will just do it. So throughout medical school, because I came in, unlike the rest of them, other people knew about herbs. Other people, like I showed up on the first day drinking out of a plastic bottle and they're all talking about like how, like their glass bottles. And I was like so behind the curve. Like I was still wearing like deodorant and like all of this stuff. So I was just
Yeah,
like, I
yeah.
did not fit in that world. But then I just like embraced it and I went all in on my choice and I never looked back. And I just made it a point to make sure that this was real. Because then there was a little bit of something in me that said, okay, if this thing can't prove itself, if I'm not healed at the end of this thing, then I'm
Mhm.
going to go back and I'm going to do the other because at least that one's guaranteed to have a successful life. Right. So there's
Right.
still this like chip on my shoulders of like, okay, you better freaking prove yourself because I just gave you my whole life. I'm
Mm-hmm.
moving away from my hometown where all of my family is. I'm moving away from a life. I'm giving up everything that I spent so much time to get. And I'm choosing this. But that was the medicine. Because for the first time in my life, I chose something for me in the face of people not understanding, in the face of, family members saying that you're wasting your time, your money, your intelligence, that this world is quacks, that this is da 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 da. And then I even Google it, and you don't want to Google that stuff at that time because you're like, what the hell am I doing? And
Right.
so everything was pushing against me. And I stood there and I still chose it. And the intensity of that choice, the intensity of me choosing me for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
just gave me just a totally different perspective. And then I just was determined to change every last thing about me, because I realized I like looked back at me and I just looked at her and was like, she's not me. Like, I don't know who she is, but she is not me. I don't know. I don't even know me. I couldn't even tell you my favorite color. I didn't know like my favorite food because it was just mine. And so I was just like mad to a
Yeah.
degree too, of like, haven't got to live my life. I've been jumping through hoops. No wonder I'm not well. There's no
Mm-hmm.
reason to be here. I don't like any of it. And so then I just unraveled and unraveled, and it got messy, and my skin freaked out and my body freaked out. And this was the quote unquote healing. And so I was just like, had to tell myself every single day, like, I wrote something on a blog one time. I used like a hair like tragedy. I fried my hair off in college one time, and the only way I got through it was like, if I'm shaving my legs every freaking day, then this thing up here has to be growing. So we're just going to move forward and keep wearing a beanie. But that experience, I like just put on top of this other healing of like, I am not putting anything bad in my body. I
Yeah.
am doing everything in my power to do everything I can to help this body do what it could do.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is true, then I have to be healing. And I just like gritted my teeth and like moved forward every single day. And I felt terrible, and I didn't have anyone guiding me. So I basically stayed the same or got worse for 2 whole years in medical school. And so I had this huge psychological battle of, you're wrong. Look at this. Your skin's never been this bad your whole entire life. Your spine is changing shape. You can't feel your feet. Your da 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 da. The reality of how it looked made me want to stop and run the other direction. But me just thinking through the simplicity of, did I do something better yesterday than I did today? Then according to what I'm learning, I have to be better today than I was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I just had a tablespoon more of water, even if I just had one more grape, even if I just didn't have dairy one day, even if I just, and then I was like, and I'm doing a shit ton. So then I kept just being like, hold, please just hold. And I would go to things and people would be eating pizzas and drinking alcohol. And I'm sitting there breaking out in hives, drinking lemon water, and just like, this doesn't make any sense. I hope to God this thing works, because what am I experiencing?
Mm-hmm.
But that right there is why my practice is called grit. Because then when I looked back, when I got to rerun my labs and everything was gone, and you couldn't diagnose me with anything, and I was like feeling the magnitude of this, I sat down and was just like, what got me here? Because it didn't feel good. It felt worse than I felt better before I started than I did during that whole
Yeah.
healing time. And so then I was looking at myself and I was like, what got you here? Because this is so sweet. This is, it like still makes me want to cry. It's so beautiful here. And what if I never, like, in my head, I was just like, what if I would have stopped the day before? What if I would have stopped the week before because it was so bad and my skin was so atrocious and all of this stuff? What if I would have stopped instead of saying, I know that the laws of nature say that if I'm doing all of these things, it has to be changing. So
Mm-hmm.
hold and take care of your mind, because the mind is the problem, and push through it and push through it and push through it. And then you get there and you're like, I realized that I had never felt good. I didn't even have something to compare it to until that point. And I was like, did you know when you breathe, you just you feel really good. Did you know that you can have energy all
The
day?
simple things.
Yeah, like you can feel like your feet feel really good on the ground, and like just so all of
Yeah.
these really beautiful things. And so that's when I was just like, it was the grit, because some part
Mm.
of my upbringing, we grew up on a farm, we hoed cotton, we did all of this, physical work, and it wasn't always fun. And I looked back and I was like, I think I think the healing, I think the medicine was not in any of the doing, but it was in the grit that was required to get me through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then through medical school, I learned how to make it quicker, how to kind of help the body more, because I was just a walking experiment and I had no guide and I was
Yeah.
new to that world. And
Yeah.
so that's how all of this came about. And then I got to a point where, you know, I was controlled by the tools that were I was utilizing to improve my physical well-being. And then that's what leveled me up into this quantum world, was like, okay, if I am not well, if I remove these inputs, then that must what's what's going on. And that's when
Mhm.
I finally was like, because some parts of you have not changed. You still engage in relationships the way you did before you got in this because you are a people pleaser. And I was like,
Mm.
shit, that's got to change. And then it was like, okay, you still won't say no. When you feel a mind, body, soul no, you don't want to offend them. So you acquiesce to the moment to kind of skid around it because you don't want to have it. That's got to change.
Mm. Ah,
And
you
then
don't
I
like,
started,
yeah,
yeah,
conflict. Avoid conflict.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so then I started going and like going directly into all of those things and saying, you're going to change, you're going to change, you're going to change. And when I changed those, this other was irrelevant. And I was like, what just happened? And
Mm.
that's when I got into starting to study because I wanted to understand. And I got into this world of the quantum physics, quantum mechanics, how this metaphysical background actually works, how our mind, body, cells actually work.
Yeah.
And then I was like, holy shit, that's what I experienced. I changed.
So explain a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So I'm very familiar with that, but for our listeners that are like,
Hmm.
well, I've heard the word quantum and quantum
Yeah.
physics and quantum mechanics and quantum
Yeah.
healing and but for somebody that is like, I don't really understand what they're talking about.
Yeah.
What is a very simple way, like if you were going to explain what you mean by quantum
Mhm.
healing or quantum medicine to a 12-year-old, how
Yeah.
would you describe that?
Yes, and that's kind of the world I like to stay in because I think if we overcomplicate things, I think if we remove things so far to where you have to have a guru, a workbook, a translation system of any kind to access it,
Right.
then it's not true. So I love that you just said that,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what this is. And I usually just say what I came to realize is quantum is just a really cool world to saying be here in the world as it is, not as you think it is, not as you've been told it is, not
Mhm.
any other way, but be here and observe things as they are, and then understand that you are an active participant in what you are experiencing. So no longer can you be in your world and say that the world is doing things to me, because in that world, that's where all of this other stuff can even fit in because
Mhm.
you have no power.
Right.
But this other world is saying that you are just as valid as the tree. You are just as valid as the sun, and whatever made all of that made you.
Mhm.
So then, if you get on the level of whatever made all of that made you, then you have to start thinking of yourself on the level of the magnitude that we give to the solar system, to the sun, to nature, to waterfalls, to the ground. You're the same thing. And so then if it works in nature, you also have to understand that it works in you, that there are certain principles that work no matter what. But the
Mhm.
cool thing about being a human is that if you can access other parts of your being, you can actually go against even what nature does. And you can change the outcome of things, which is what those research studies are saying, is even the act of observing something
Right.
changes that which is being observed. And
Yeah.
who is changing it? Whoever is looking at it. And so this is where this is more important during our time right now
Mhm.
than anything else on the planet. What are you looking at? What are you consuming? What are you giving your vitality? Because we are so rigid and controlled with our finances. Like we want to make sure everything is worth the investment, even if it's like $10. People like they don't want to waste their money. But when it comes to our vitality, our life force, we throw it away like it's just like nothing.
Right.
When if we looked at it according to what this quantum world is saying, is like everything that you do, wherever you look, you change that environment. So just us stepping outside in our backyard, we are changing those plants. Those plants are
Mhm.
changing us.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Right.
and this is the
Right.
world that we live in. And if you can even just acknowledge that, like me showing up in a room changes the room. It has to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then my awareness, the way I believe, the way I think, my intentions are what dictate more of the output than anything else. And so that's even with like the example that I try to give people is like, say that um, you wanted to go, or somebody wanted, like a friend wanted you to go help them, and you didn't want to go. You don't want to help them. You want to do your own thing. You want to stay in your house that day. You don't even want to put on pants, but you feel guilty. So you go help them. So in the world of how things look, you were good. You were a good person. You went and helped them.
You showed up.
But what you were thinking inside was, I freaking hate this. I can't wait till I get home. I can't
Right.
believe this is, and I'm kind of mad at her right now. Like I don't even, like, for no
Right.
reason.
Yeah.
You're changing that environment. So what you've actually done is done harm to you, the individual, the environment,
Mhm.
because you're not in accordance to what is true. Because if it was true, you would feel good, which is another nod to our internal navigation system. When you
Yeah.
feel good, you're in alignment with something that is true. And so then if you take that same scenario and the person was like, I actually don't, I, I don't want to put pants on today. It's not an excuse, but that's the best I got because it's true. You have actually done something positive, if we want to think in the world of positive, negative, good, and bad, for that scenario, for that human. And you've opened her up to something that's going to be more beneficial to her because you are acting in accordance to something that's true. But the world we live in says, no, the good scenario was her going no matter what, at the expense of her emotions, at the expense of how she felt, and
Mhm.
then her intentions there. I'm just doing it so she's not mad at me, or maybe so that she'll do something else
Mhm.
that I want her to do in a week. And what's true in this world is that the intentions going into it are like so much more
Yeah.
important than
Yeah.
the showing up.
Right. There,
And so this
because
is
there's
the
still an
world.
energy
Yeah,
there. It's still
exactly.
your intentions and your thoughts and your beliefs, they are still energy.
Yes.
And even if a person isn't consciously picking up on an
Yeah.
energy that you are maybe not even consciously putting out,
Yes.
if it's how you truly feel, it's going out there, it's
Yeah.
being put out. And so then you have this, like you say, it changes things. So even
Mm-hmm.
if it's not perceptible in the moment to
Mm-hmm.
consciously to whoever's involved, there's still that entanglement of energy
Exactly.
that, right, that is going on.
Yeah.
Nothing that we can see,
Yeah.
but it's felt on some level,
Exactly.
and it
And
does
so,
change things.
exactly. And so then we apply this to something physical, like say you and I are going to drink a green juice. Okay. So if somebody were to look at us both drinking a green juice, they're like, oh my gosh, they're so healthy. They're doing really good things for their body. Maybe. Let's ask better questions. Let's go into this quantum world of the things that we can't see, feel, taste, touch. What's going on here? So we look at you and you look at the green juice and you're all giddy and you can't wait to taste it. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to give me so much energy and I love it and I feel good. And just, I'm so happy about it. Like you're just like overly excited about it and you're excited and it's going to make you feel good, to make you, and you're going to feel so good with it. That's the
Sure.
extent of what you're thinking. You drink it, you get that benefit times 10
Mm-hmm.
on the quote unquote positive side. Okay. So say I have a green juice and I'm looking at it. And what I'm thinking right there is, I don't really like it, but I made it better today. So it tastes pretty good. So it's okay. This is better than, the latte that I actually wanted. But I'm drinking this to prevent cancer. What
Yeah.
does that human drink down? They do not, they get whatever benefit that just the natural amount of the compounds in that solution
Mm-hmm.
have on physiology. So they'd still get probably a net positive, maybe, depending on how intense their belief was.
Right.
But if their belief is, I am drinking this to prevent cancer, we've got to understand what your neurology, your subconscious, how this world actually works. You're
Mm-hmm.
drinking down a jar that says cancer to your cells. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what it looks like on the outside. So
Right.
this is where this is quantum. And
Yes.
that's where it is very much in your control, in your reality.
Mm-hmm.
You have access to it right now. in every single moment. But what happens is a lot of people want something to do and they don't want to change. And they
Yeah.
want something to be, we don't want to change us. We don't want to look in the mirror and be like, sweetheart, you're our biggest problem, but I love you because you're also the most powerful thing on the planet. But you're a big problem right now. And so then how do you turn that scenario into something medicinal? My side, if I'm looking at something to prevent cancer, I have got a shit ton of work to do psychologically,
Right.
because
Yep.
we can't just like look at it and be like, so this is where people are like, okay, affirmations. I'm doing this to be well. I'm doing this to be well. I'm doing this to be well. And your body's like, shh,
Mm.
you are adorable, but this is annoying and you're lying, because the body is true. And so the body responds to what is true, not how it looks, not how it smells, not how Aunt Susie thinks it is.
Mm-hmm.
It responds to what is true. And if what is true for you in that moment is you are only drinking that to prevent cancer, you're better off having something that when you look at it, you just get a little mind orgasm because you're so
Right.
excited to taste it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It,
that's the truth of
truth.
our world. And so that's why everyone's so caught up in the doing of stuff. And I'm sitting there saying, how are you doing it? Why are you doing it? And they're like,
Right.
oh, that doesn't matter. It does, or
The
else all of
belief.
the
Yeah.
doing would have
Yeah.
worked by now. And
Yeah.
so this is where
Yeah.
everyone's like, there's so many conflicting things. There's not.
There's the belief is what is happening here.
Yeah.
The belief, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the belief has a biology, not to steal
Mhm.
Bruce Lipton's, but there
Yeah.
the biology of belief is an
Yeah.
absolute it, it's absolute 100% accurate.
Absolutely.
And if you don't know it in your own heart and soul,
Mhm.
then go look at the science because
Yeah.
it's all there. So if you need
Yeah.
science, the
Go find it.
science is there. You'll
Yeah.
find it.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think somebody, to use your example, drinking green juices all day because they were told that that's
Yeah.
going to help them not get cancer,
Yeah.
is probably in a weaker position,
Mhm.
and more vulnerable
Yeah.
than the person that's like, oh, I'm going to go have, a
Yeah.
Dairy Queen and a pizza tonight. And I feel amazing. I love life.
Yeah.
Everything is great.
Yeah.
So, because the belief is so powerful.
Yeah.
S- So, on that, what do you think? I just want to get your thoughts because obviously you touched on it a little earlier when you said you were doing okay, maybe not optimal health, but you were doing
Mhm.
okay until you got to college, and then you did a series of vaccines, and
Mhm.
then things went to shit,
Yeah.
right? Um, so so now that's what is up. That's what's
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Um, I guess what I'm wondering, what what do you tell your clients who come in, and it's not the ones that have decided that's not for me. It's
Mhm.
not the ones that have decided that is for me and I have done it or I will do it. It's for,
Mhm.
what do you say? What can we offer to the ones that perhaps did go ahead,
Yeah.
got it, and now regret it and are fearful that
Yeah.
they have something that they can't,
Mhm.
get rid of?
Yeah.
What can we tell those people
Yeah.
about how they can emotionally,
Mhm.
mentally empower themselves,
Yeah.
not to make themselves vulnerable to something that may
Mhm.
or may not be of an effect?
Right.
So the mental emotional part, and then what do you suggest that is something? It's almost like, how do we help people become their own alchemist and
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
transform something that it is in them that they may be fearful about
Mhm.
into something that they don't have to fear?
Exactly. And that's such a beautiful way to put it, because then if you're listening and the vaccine is not even of interest to you, put this on anything that's going on in your body that you think has power over you, right?
Exactly.
This is not again, like we said at the very beginning, all of this is not a unique scenario. It's just called something different, right?
Hmm.
There's a new celebrity on the streets with regards to psychological manipulation within the health industry. So, but this is so important because this is what's stealing people's health, vitality, and
Hmm.
aliveness. And so much of their attention is being captured by fear. And so, one of the things that I tell any person that has found me after, right? They got this thing. And then they're just tormented by it. The first thing I always say is we've got to get really, really honest. And it sucks sometimes because our stories are this powerful, but it's also cool because our stories are this powerful. And my question is, what's going on right now? Like, really? And so we can scan the body, we can understand what symptoms you're having. And then my next question is, do you know for certain, I need you to tell me honestly, do you know for certain you knew what was in that vial that went into your arm? And most of them will say yes. And I'm like, how do you know? And then there's some kind of backtracking and we don't know. Okay. So is there a chance that something could have happened? You got the saline solution. Something could have happened and the batch that you got, again, was just saline. Something could have happened and like, whatever, come up with a story. Is there a chance? Because if you can't say that you went and said, hey, can I have a drop or two of what you're about to put in my body so I can go and analyze it in a lab that has the capacity to get on that level to even understand what's in it, then you can't say that you know what was in it. Okay, so that's one thing. So then don't hang your hat on something that you don't know for certain, because it's a story and there's a potential. And if there's a potential, there's unlimited potentials.
Right.
So don't torture yourself with one that you think that you know. Because there's so many things in the medical industry that we can go back and look and be like, so-and-so got sued because they were giving people what they thought was an active, pharmaceutical compound, and they just were giving out sugar pills to save money and blah, 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 blah. You don't know unless you were there. And so don't torture yourself with a story. First of all, just have like the grace and the kindness to yourself to not do that. Okay. So then what we're left with is whatever is here. If you had physical changes, which I am a human, I didn't even know about vaccines, which is why I signed up to keep getting all three, even after I had symptoms after the first one. Cause I was like, this thing, I don't know, I guess just do the next one.
What we're supposed to do.
Make this thing go away.
Blind trust.
And so then I was in that position because then you're saying, well, I can't deny what I'm feeling. And then I was like, okay, well, again, let's get really honest. And this is a conversation I had with myself because I tortured myself. I went and looked at all of the adjuvants, all of the DNA particles, where it came. I looked at everything that could have been in what I received. And it didn't help me at all. It didn't improve my life, not one bit. If it doesn't improve your life, why the hell are you doing it? Okay. That's another component of this. Then we get here. Okay. I am having physical symptoms I didn't have prior to this. Now what? Okay. Well, there's certain things that we can do within the physical body. The body heals no matter what. So you can't have an except for. Everyone likes to have an except for, but it's an opportunity for you to go look at your belief systems and know that you are a perfect creation. There's nothing missing, nothing broken. If you came into this world, you have all that you need, exactly how you need it.
Right.
And so there's not something that man can make that your body doesn't know how to already handle. Let's think about that. Because if man could make something that somebody not made by man, which none of us are made by man, we come from man. We are not made by man. How can man come up with something that's working on the level of divinity? The sun, the moon, the stars doesn't have the capacity to overcome. Is there a chance that maybe your story's wrong? If yes, then let's pause. So then that was another thing that I was like, okay, then I need to go engage where I think my except for was. And for me, I had overcome autoimmune. And like, if you haven't even changed anything in your health, I would start like, are you eliminating properly? Go handle that before you try to chase down a vaccine injury.
Right.
Are you digesting your food? You have no business going after these things because you don't know that that's what it is.
Yeah.
You're not even working like a basic human being. So to go latch on and say it's these zebras, how do you know? I don't know if it's true. So that wouldn't be my go-to. I would get you digesting like a regular human being. Right. So then that's another component. And then I was sitting there because I could, if somebody even said Gardasil, I had a physiological response. And then I was like, shit, I made myself worse by learning about this thing. And then my mental association with all of the shit of the story makes me feel like shit. And so like the example that I always try to give people is like, okay, because I went to a movie for the first time in a long time with somebody, and it wasn't a movie I would ever go to, but I was like, this will be just like a fun experiment for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very suspenseful, not a good, positive, good feeling movie at all, but I enjoyed the company. So I was like, I'm going to get through this. I'll just do a little experiment. I'm going to change how I feel in this environment.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like shit, and I had my eyes closed and I'm sitting there trying to think good thoughts, but the sounds, the feeling of the
Right.
humans around me,
Yeah.
the environment, like I was sweating and I'm sitting there like, I'm not even watching this thing and I am sweating. And I practice this stuff and I'm pretty
Right.
like proud of how, much I've evolved. And I'm like, this thing ate my lunch and it's a movie.
A movie.
And then I came out of it and was like, oh my gosh, this is the perfect example of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We are going and say, your horror movie, that theater is the vaccine. And you're sitting in it, watching it every single freaking day, hoping that you feel like how you would feel watching a romantic comedy. That's not how the body works. The body is saying, okay, I'm sitting in a horror film. I'm going to make you sweaty. I'm going to create some adrenaline, some stress hormones, because that's what the music is set here to do. And the people feel it. So you feel the people. And like, we're all just like a stinky mess. It doesn't matter. Like, could I exert enough effort in that moment to feel good and like in love and happy and giddy? It takes a shit ton of work. We have the capacity, but you're not going to win that anytime soon. So
Right.
what is this with this story? Get out of the movie theater. See how you feel. Don't look at it. Don't listen to the music. Don't go talk to people who are also watching that horror film
Right.
and expect that your physical body is going to feel like a little twirly, happy, giddy
Yeah.
love story.
Yeah.
So you got to get out of that movie theater, go plop yourself down in the other, tie yourself down to the seat if you have to, because your brain's going to want to go back to the other one. Because what if? Well, what if? No.
Right. Yeah. You need to find the way to disengage. I mean, unless you
Exactly.
are like an accomplished Zen master, and there are very few of them walking the earth. It takes right. I mean, we can try, right? We can try. And that's the beauty of having that as a goal. Is it's a wonderful process to be practicing.
Exactly.
And the more you practice, the better you get at it. And but it's not something that you go, well, you know what, I'm going to be like that now, and then you flip a switch and now you're like the Buddha or Jay Shetty. Whatever.
Well, and the cool thing is you are Buddha. You are these people. You have access to all of this right now. We just don't value the practical. Like for me, I think there's more to being a human, more to not being the Zen master up in the Himalayan mountains. I think there's more to being a human and being so very human and being like, oh my gosh, I feel like shit. I'm going to change what's happening. That's an actual input. I'm not going to go get an herb that's going to calm my anxiety while I'm sitting in a movie theater watching a horror film. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying be a human and say, oof, I feel like shit. I'm going to get up. Even if it disrupts the whole movie theater, even if it makes my date uncomfortable and people have questions or why I'm so sensitive, I'm going to get my cute little ass up and I'm going to go and plop it in the movie theater that I actually want to experience with my life and my body and my soul. Yeah. And like, I think there's more to that now than everyone expecting that we have to be Zen masters.
True.
Right?
Yeah. I think there's such a great point. Yeah.
Such a sweetness to be like, just be a human and be very practical and don't medicate something that is just a response to an input, a proper response to the input. You don't want to like go and give somebody, anxiety medication or antidepressants because they're watching a horror film in that moment. You're just like, why don't we get them out of the horror film?
Exactly. There's usually a much simpler answer that isn't self-sabotaging that you can do. And you're right. I think just being really willing to just connect with all of the aspects, the wonderful aspects of being a human being, and tapping into all of your senses. And then that's why we're right. I mean, I guess that's why we're here, right? We're here in the realm of matter, and we have all of these senses. And so to not take the advantage of the opportunity to feel them and then figure out how to use them to really enhance your life and enjoy your life is you're leaving a lot on the table, right? And those are really almost the very things that kind of set you on that path for lack of a better word, toward more enlightenment or a
Yeah.
higher consciousness or
Yeah.
whatever. Just
Yeah.
the more that you embody that and feel your own power as a human being,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
the more you're probably going in that direction, and you're going to feel more just more fulfilled and at peace with yourself.
Yeah.
And then you're demonstrating something amazing to those around you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Wow. Well, I have a shit ton more questions for you, but I'm going to have to ask you if you'll come back.
Absolutely. I would love to.
Yeah, this was awesome. You have been so generous with your time. I know we did run over a little bit, so thank you for
Of
being willing to
course.
do that. But I love everything that you shared, and I think that everyone, if they're open-minded and listen to what we've talked about and the things that you've shared in your own journey, being willing to go through what you went through, just I mean, for 2 years to be that miserable, and you wanted to turn back, but you had this you listened to your intuition or some voice that told you to keep going.
Yeah.
That's such an important thing I really want to drive home to people is if you're trying to turn some things around and you're feeling like you're going backwards and getting worse, don't necessarily assume that you are, right? You can assume that that is the process of your body going, okay, I've got some work to do and I am on it. Just hang with me while I
Yeah.
figure this out for you.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so
Awesome.
beautiful. And it's such a sweetness. Like if you can really absorb what you just touched on there, like if you had that unshakable belief in your wholeness, in your wellness, and in your power, if you really, really did, life becomes so sweet because then you drop into the grace that it is an offering. Like there's nothing you have to do for your body to be like, okay, I'll heal you today. It does it in the background all day long. The sweetness is saying, hey, I'm here with you and we're going to do this thing. We're going to do it big. And then we're also going to play and we're going to taste and we're going to touch and we're going to feel and we're going to dance and we're going to sing because let's do this. You're doing all of this to keep me well. Let's make this thing beautiful. And if you can drop into that, that's what you just touched on, is that it's so sweet. And that's what you and I kind of touched on in the beginning of this conversation. Like we want everybody to feel that. That's why like there's this like, oh, in us of like, it's just so sweet. And like, it's undeniable because when you believe in the brilliance and the magnificence of you, like nobody could come tell us a story because we're like, my experience is something so much better. And I don't want your story. I don't need your fear I'm totally fine. And there's no fear story that could come and disrupt my well-being. And to know that that is just your birthright is this beautiful thing. So I love that you said that to wrap that up here. We all have it. And if you're listening, if you're here, you have all that you need. And that's so sweet if you can really, really, really drop in and know it.
Right.
Yeah.
Perfect words to end on. However, before I let you go, please tell everyone where they can find out more about you if they would like to.
Absolutely. So my website is gritnaturalmedicine.com. If you want to work with me, you can reach out to us. We do things very differently. We require lots of change and we're soft, but we are gritty. So it's definitely an adventure. Then I am on social media at Grit Natural and at Dr. Cassie Huckaby.
Perfect. And we will also include those links in our show notes so people can find you easily.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Cassie. This has been a joy. And that is a wrap. So everybody listening, thank you so much for spending time with me and Dr. Cassie Huckaby today. Make sure to check out her website and social media. You're going to love what you find there. And if you want to find out what private coaching with me is all about, just head on over to LoreeBischoff.com. And I just want to remind you all before we go, all of your outward expression begins in the mind, and that includes the degree of health that we experience. So don't forget, mind your mind. Okay, on that note, I will see you all next week. Stay feisty, my friends. Stay healthy and go make some epic shift happen in your lives. And that goes for you too, Mr. Gary V.